मॉर्निंग श्री मैम। मैम आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही।
Has Bhaskar joined? I don't see him, no?
मैम सर हैज ऑलरेडी ज्वाइंड ही
Yeah,
इज
yeah,
ऑनलाइन।
yeah, yeah. I've joined because of
Oh,
there is a bit
acha.
of a problem with the internet, so I thought that initially I'll start with the audio only
Ha.
and then switch on to the video.
गुड मॉर्निंग
Uh,
सर।
Good
Good
morning,
morning, everyone.
Bhaskar. Good morning, Bhaskar. I have the duty of introducing you because this is a new batch. You have not taken a class with this batch. This is the senior batch, you know.
Okay, okay.
So I think it is 8:30. So I will. We have this. Do we do the prayer session? Mukta?
लेट मी चेक वंस हु इज द कंसर्न पर्सन टू डू द
Which group has to do it?
हाँ
If you can
जस्ट
just
जस्ट
check.
लेट मी चेक वंस।
Ashkar, there's an assembly session, so we'll just go through that and then I will get on to the introduction. Fine?
Yeah, yeah, perfectly all right. Yeah, yeah.
Acha. Have you seen the weather outside? It's totally fog.
Yeah, I know. I mean, especially for me, a genetically lazy Bengali, getting up so early in the morning is a challenge.
But I thought you went for your walks and stuff.
Yeah, I did. So I got up at 8 o'clock. But in general, on Saturdays, which is a weekend, I
It's an
tend to
off.
wake up a
Hmm.
bit late. Yeah, and especially when my family is not there. Had
Oh,
it been
acha, they are
my
not here. They are not
they're
here.
in Assam, so they're coming back on 23rd.
Okay. Y'all were all there, na? In
Yes, yes,
Assam.
yes, yes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
इज देयर काजल जैन इज ऑनलाइन? इनाद?
Who's the CC, Mukta?
Ma'am, CC is Kajal Jain and she is not still online. That's why I'm trying to connecting her. Just give me a 1 minute more.
Kriti, can you tell us who's the group who's
Good morning. Good morning,
Kriti?
Bhaskar sir.
Good morning. Kriti,
Good
just tell
morning.
us who's the group who has to do the
Ma'am, I have no idea, but Kajal is the CC, so I believe she must be knowing.
but she's not online. She hasn't even entered.
Preeti, can I request you, can you continue with the prayer, please?
Yes, ma'am, sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So let's just chant Gayatri
Yes.
Mantra, everybody.
Yes,
Yes.
please.
Om भूर्भुवस्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ भूर्भुवस्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ भूर्भुवस्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ भूर्भुवस्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ भूर्भुवस्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्।
Thank you, Kriti. Shri ma'am, I request you, you can start the introduction of sir because the group is not ready with all things na today. मैम, आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही.
Good morning, everyone. What I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce Sir to you. His name, I think all of you have seen his name, Bhaskar Majumdar, and I will give you a background of what he has done. Currently he heads corporate communication and digital for Aegis India, which is a French construction company. Am I right, Bhaskar?
It's actually engineering companies. So I mean,
Engineering,
we consult the consulting companies here.
Okay, a French engineering company, and he's backed by a work experience of around 22 years, and he's been involved in various very important areas like strategic communication, corporate affairs, brand building, innovative media, influencer management, crisis communication, digital and social media outreach. And if you look at his background, he started his career in PR. He was in Genesis PR, and his career, that is 2000, I can see 2000 to 2001. He worked as an associate in PR, and before Aegis India, he was with Adfactors. I mean, when I met him also at Praxis, he was with Adfactors, I remember very clearly. And he was senior group head at Adfactors. And he was involved in creating and driving various integrated marketing campaigns across earned, digital, social, and paid platforms. And he had worked on a whole range of clients. I mean, I think even if he tells you it will take him more than half an hour, the number of clients that he has worked on, in various business sectors. Before that, he was with an agency called Vaishnavi Advisory. He was general manager there. Vaishnavi is no longer here currently, isn't it, Bhaskar?
Yeah. It's closed down here.
It closed down. And then uske pehle he was with Reliance Industries as GM Corporate Communications, and we all know Reliance, and we've seen the performance of Reliance during this pandemic. They've done extremely well, and he was involved in creating communication strategies for all products and services of RIL. And before that, he was with APCO Worldwide as associate director. Uske pehle he was in a different sector, which is ESPN Star Sports. He was manager corporate communications, and that is as far as his performance, I mean his professional background is. But if you look at his education, He is, in the last year, I think he's been one of the most productive if people in the PR business.
So I'm the one who has utilized the lockdown time completely.
Absolutely. In lockdown, I think every week I used to see a tweet from him saying that he's qualified, he's got so and so certificate. And how many certificates did you pick up? How many courses did you
I've
do?
completed almost 8 short-time courses, which I always wanted to do earlier, but because of regular work and especially working for the agency, there are different challenges. I was not been able
Yes,
to do
yes,
so.
yes. But
So
then
fortunately or unfortunately, during the lockdown time only, I switched job.
yeah.
So I was on the notice period also, and I was on the honeymoon time for the new company also. So I had the luxury of time of doing
So you
things.
utilize your time, ekdam maximum,
Yeah,
maximum utilization of time. And some of the certificates he got were, I can see it here, uh, from Harvard Kennedy School, from National University of Singapore, email marketing from NIT, and the list goes on and on. So I think my introduction was fairly substantial. And now I hand it over to you, Bhaskar.
thank you, ma'am, and good morning, everyone, and thanks a lot for taking out time so early in the morning on a weekend to attend the session. And to be very frank, I'm not a regular lecturer. Neither, I have before this lockdown, I've studied a lot. So whatever the discussion or whatever the things I'm going to share during the session is whatever I have picked up in the last 22 years. And please feel free to ask questions. Let it be very interactive. As Sri ma'am has requested, I have prepared a small presentation, but that presentation is more to take pointers to discuss and take me as a fellow student also, because as Sri ma'am has said, I'm still studying, and especially in PR, oldies like us, they have to learn a lot and catch up with the youngsters, because we generally, I mean, 1 year back, I was not very much confident on different outreach on digital or public policy, which the younger generation are equipped with. And hence, that was the reason I started, doing courses and reading up. So please feel free to ask questions, and let's have this session as a more interactive one. I can give you some examples of brands on how they have managed certain ethical problems, but in the presentation I have not mentioned those names, because it would not look good to mention brands. But feel free to ask me questions more about those incidents, so that I can elaborate more. And I'll just try to share my screen. Is it visible?
Yes, it's visible now.
Is visible. So technology is something which I'm coming from an Orkut age to WhatsApp. Somehow I managed WhatsApp, and then everyone shifted to Telegram. So what is ethics? In simple definition, it's more of moral philosophy, values dealing with moral duty or obligation. Now, definitions are something else, and in practical sense, when companies work, things generally change. So, for certain companies or certain business sections, there will be certain ethics which may not be fit for certain other businesses. The general concern or questions for ethics is, if something is right or wrong, if something is fair or unfair, something is good or bad, if one company or one person is responsible or irresponsible. But again, all these things, depend on individual to individual, because there is no written guidelines, and it's more of your own personal conscience and moral duty, which makes you to, deal with these issues. But in a simple word, ethics is a system of moral principles. They affect how people make decisions and lead their lives. Ethics is concerned with what is good for individuals and society, and is also described as moral philosophy. But there are a lot of issues with that also. In especially for a particular thing, ethics can actually pinpoint a disagreement. I mean, people may have different opinions, and for that, it's always better to have a discussion forum to create on especially on the company's part, to discuss on certain pointers to come to a conclusion. Ethics doesn't give right answer certain times. Most of the times it's right, but certain times it may differ. I mean, people may differ with their choices of ideas. Ethics can also give several answers. So we'll just try to explain certain things in certain examples where you can discuss it further. The major problem in a business environment is this, that the the issues which are related to ethics are generally trust and reputation. Now, to be very frank, if you close your eyes, if you think of two companies, like one company is Tata and one company is Reliance, the basic thought of average people will be the Tata Group will be trustworthy and it's reputed, and Reliance, on the other hand, it's reputed, but trust factor maybe it's missing. Now that's a general thought process. But at the end of the day, both the groups are doing business, and when you have to do business and you have to earn money, because you have to be profitable to for the growth of the company, other things. I think ethical issues are raised on every organization, every business verticals. But that is how different companies they position themselves. So in a way, Tata's over the years, because of Ratan Tata and other people, they have been able to put that trust in the mind of the consumers or normal people that it's a trusted company, which it is. But as I said, every company has certain issues. Now, the major question which comes to everyone's mind is that, can I trust the organization at all? Now, it depends on company to company, the kind of thought leaders, the kind of spokesperson or kind of leaders they have, the kind of track record they have, kind of product or services they're offering, how they're related to common people, and there any ethical issues out of those business practices, which sometimes are there, which sometimes are not there. Now the communication professional has to, they actually come into a very, they actually come into the line of fire, because uh, they have to create that balance in between. If he is the corporate communication guy, in-house guy, or if he is the agency guy, his major work will be into balancing out things. One can be the client expectation if you're from the agency side, the public interest, the professional code of ethics, their own personal values. Now, these are three or four things which one has to, judge and balance it out for any project of any client of any brand. Now, there are international, organizations which have, PRCAI there. I mean, they have got code of ethics which is clearly written, but again, it's very vague when it comes to actual business sense. So most of the time, it's your personal opinion, or your how you have been groomed. What are the things you think is right? What are the things you think is fair? It is going to help you out in balancing out these acts. Now, in business environment, many ethical dilemma concern the truth. Personal ethics usually begin where law ends. It may be legal, but is it ethical? So, in simple terms, I mean, to be very frank, for a PR professional, the ideal situation should be that if a action is legal and is under the purview of law, then I think it's ethical. But again, it's debatable depending on the business to business, depending on organization to organization, depending on the kind of mission vision they have. But in general idea, if any action which is legally right, people generally consider it as ethical. The practitioner job is to serve as a client's mouthpiece, regardless of personal views. There are a lot of times when you work for an agency and you are managing clients which are into particular business vertical, and they have certain issues with which and certain issues which they are handling it on their own, and you may not agree or party to those the way it's been handled, but being a professional, you generally tend to work it out for the client. Now, work for clients holding an opinion at variance with one's own, as long as they don't affect your work. You're free. I mean, any organization or any profession is free to choose to work for a particular brand. If the person, the professional, thinks that it's ethical ways of doing business is right, and you also agree to that. But it's a completely a professional decision which one has to take. Now, I mean, coming back to agency side, I know certain agencies which has taken this step of saying that you will not work for tobacco company, you will not work for liquor company, you will not work for lottery businesses, or will not work for meat processing units. So it's either a organizational point of view, or a individual point of view. There are certain companies which have said that will not work with certain companies which are earlier found in some kind of money laundering cases. So generally, that's how agencies work. But now with the business environment after post-COVID, I don't know how much one can stick to their own principles. But generally, big companies they tend to have their own code of ethics and they stick to it. Any questions? Hello, hello, hello. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
You guys can see the presentation also?
No, sir, it's not visible now.
Okay, let me check it out.
Resharing is
Is it visible
now it's
now?
visible. Now it's visible, sir.
Not visible. One sec. Is it visible now?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay. So any questions, you guys have? Okay. Okay. So, in this slide, I'm just going to explain that, all good things apart, at the end of the day, if someone is doing a business, like, any organization, either it's a promoter-driven one or it's a MNC, the business aim is to be profitable, which will lead to growth. So basics that, paying the salaries of the employees and as well as increment every year. So at the end of the day, every business organization, their key aim is to, do business well and earn profits. Hence, to be profitable is key for any business organization. And depending on the nature of the business, either it's a B2B or B2C company. I hope you guys understand what is a B2C and B2B company.
Yes, sir.
Can you give me some examples of a B2B company?
So, examples for the B2B company could be Intel or any other
Yes,
technological
or a
company.
Lanco or a L&T, which is more
Yes.
of, yeah, you're right. And B2C will be more of a Vodafone or a Samsung or a,
Consumer goods
yeah,
and yeah.
consumer related. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So now, ethics and the nature of work, they are interrelated. And depending on the nature of the business, either it's a B2B or B2C. And why I'm giving an example of B2B, B2C is that, most of the B2B businesses are generally into a regulated environment. And when there is any kind of business in regulated environment, there is always a huge conflict in between, ethics and the nature of business, which may happen into B2C company also, but, B2C company relies more on, customer choice and nature of product, whereas a B2B company more relies on how the regulations have been done. So depending on a B2B or a B2C company and also what kind of product and services they offer, there can be always a conflict in between ethics and being profitable. Now, as I said earlier, that every businessman or every business organizations, their key aim every year annually is to create some kind of wealth for the company so that the business grows, they can sustain the business, they can reach out to other areas of business, and also they can take care of their employees as well as their families. Now, to give an example, a big reputed company, which is an oil and gas company, when they started their CSR program, they spend a lot for CSR. So their thought was that we'll adopt the villages from where our workers generally come, and our CSR activities will be more of managing their kids, managing their wife, giving opportunity and work to their wife. Now, if you step back and think that as a company, if they're doing well, yeah, in terms of CSR, they're doing the right thing. Uh, Now again, if it comes to ethics, there will be mixed reactions. A lot of people may say that if they have to give it back to the society, they may choose to give someone who is more needy and not the employees. Uh, but people inside the company, they think that if the employees are working for them, it's their duty to take care of their family, their wife, their kids, and giving equal opportunity to their wife and work to their wife, and giving employment, education to their children is also part of the CSR activities they have. So as I said, ethics can have different understanding and variations in between different individuals, and it's very difficult to pinpoint a certain thing. And talking about the business, especially when the business is in a, as I said, in a regulated framework, it's very difficult to do business in a ethical way. Not that every company is not doing work in an ethical way, but at certain times in a regulated environment, you have to work it out in a certain way so that the company gets a business and earn some kind of profit and money out of it. For example, telecom, oil and gas, power, mining, construction are certain areas of business where generally these kind of issues which generally erupt. Any questions? Okay, I'll take the next one. Now, I mean, when it comes to PR professionals, I mean, like any other consulting profession, like lawyers, doctors, finance auditors, we also have another strategic consulting profession. So, taking the case of lawyers, communication professionals also have to safeguard clients or brand reputation for external stakeholders, irrespective of the nature of business and the way the business has been conducted. A lot of times, if you're working in an agency, I'll come to the corporate side later. If you're working for an agency, a lot of times you manage clients which has got a lot of crises, and those crises are all ethical in nature. Now, you may not agree to the issues or to the ways of handling of those crises by the client, but being a professional, you always try to safeguard the brand's reputation, because that is what you're supposed to do. And like lawyers, I mean, they take up clients fully knowing that their client may be 80% or 90% on the wrong side of the law, but being a professional, and that's their professional duty to work it out. They generally give their level best to safeguard that client. So at times there can be conflicts on ethical grounds, but the responsibility of the profession is to manage the situation on behalf of the client, and that is how generally every profession has to work. I mean, certain times I've seen in my life that certain time organizations which has taken this step of not working for the client for a particular work, like the PR agency which was handling UP government on a on a particular criminal case, they decided not to work for the government at all. I've seen people who are working on various brands or organizations, and on certain issues they choose that they will not be the right person to work on it, and they ask their seniors to get someone else. So as I said, then on a larger thing, there will be always conflicts on ethical grounds. But as a professional, it's our responsibility to manage the situation on behalf of the client. But it's completely up to us. If we are convinced and if we think we agree with those pointers, then you can always go ahead, or you can always say that we are not the right person to work with. As I said, there are consulting agencies which has taken this call that they will not work for meat processing companies or lottery companies. Now, that may not be the case with all the agencies. If you take the top 10 or 12 agencies, I think there is only one agency which has taken the decision of not working for lottery clients or meat processing or tobacco or liquor. Now, on the media side also, if you're handling a tobacco client or a liquor client, it's very difficult to get any kind of visibility. Actually, newspapers like Hindu or Hindu Business Line, they have their own, editorial policies which says that, will not promote any brand which is related to either tobacco or liquor. There's separate ways to do it. That is the reason all these liquor companies or tobacco companies, they come out with different awards, or they come out with products. No, they may a liquor company may introduce a soda brand. The brand name will be similar, but they will try to promote the soda. So there are issues with certain section of business to get into direct advertising or PR, and that may be also a reason of certain agencies not taking up those clients. But if you ask me as a professional, I think it will be more challenging to handle such businesses where the scope of work is very limited and you have to work it out in a different way, in a more creative way to give certain visibility to the brand. But again, it's a personal choice and personal call. So it also depends on consulting agencies and individuals to take a call on whether to work for a specific brand or not, depending on the nature of the business. I'll give you certain examples, like one particular auto company which they came into heavy fire from media as well as RW groups, pressure groups, NGOs, of being someone who's using groundwater for their factory use, and the residents and the nearby villages were deprived of water. Now there are certain ways to handle this kind of things, and especially for a PR professional, it becomes very difficult when the media is against a particular company, when the local residents are against the company, when there are various special groups or NGOs which are doing dharna, although dharna has become a choice of the weekend for a lot of people, but still it becomes very, very difficult for the communication team as well as agencies to manage this kind of things. But in a management discussion, the decision was taken by the company that how to manage this particular issue, and they decided that we'll start to harvest rainwater, and 95% of our water which has been used in the factory will be used from the rainwater harvesting for the first 3 to 6 months of time. And after 1 year of this entire process of rainwater harvesting, they will be in a position where they can actually give extra water to the villages. Now, it's completely up to the company to take a decision like that. There are certain companies which may not move an inch, and they can continue doing what is best suited for their business and company, rather than spending certain money to handle such issues. But there are also companies which may decide to work it out in a better way, which is a win-win situation for everyone. So this auto company was a huge auto company, and especially for media and especially for pressure groups, the bigger the brand is, the bigger the issues are. I mean, if it's an unknown company and it does a lot of unethical practices, a lot of problems, a lot of things which are not at an ethical way, they sometimes get scot free, because the media doesn't tend to write for companies which are fairly unknown. So big companies, any big company like a Ashok Leyland or a Maruti or a TVS in the auto sector will be companies which are very well known, and media loves to write about it. And especially for the journalist, if he is writing a big story, the probability of getting a story in the front page or in a prominent place in a newspaper, which is byline, is there. So it also, I mean, we'll discuss it later on. So it also becomes a big thing for the journalist to write sensational stories or twisting certain stories which may give some kind of color to the story. So this as I said, this company decided to start rainwater harvesting and use that water for factory use instead of groundwater for the initial 1 year. And from the next year they started giving this extra water which has been harvested from rain to the residents, and it was a very unique way to manage a particular issue. And similarly, there are certain companies, I'll not again name them, they're also using groundwater for making beverages, and it took them almost 2 to 3 years to manage the situation, because they thought this is the issue which doesn't need to adjust at that time. And by the time they thought of they actually addressed the issue, it was too late, and there was a huge dent on the brand. So it depends on company to company how to manage things. It depends on the thought leaders, also the management team, how they think. It's basically the way the management team will think that that's the way the brand is going to work. Second, there was a huge perception of auto industry being a major cause of pollution. Now, these are issues which I mean, this particular issue is more of a industry issue rather than a particular brand issue, because any company which is into manufacturing of automobiles, be it four-wheelers or commercial vehicles or two-wheelers, they will be under the line of fire by, again, pressure groups, NGOs, also from government of being, the major cause of pollution, especially for Delhi. Now, one particular auto industry, which was given this mandate by all the prominent auto brands that you have to manage this particular issue, which is becoming a much more bigger issue than it was earlier, and pressure groups and certain section of journalists have started questioning that if that is the ethical way of doing business in India. Now, in India, businesses happen in a very different way compared to European companies. The same auto brands which are operating in, say, Europe may have different set of rules and regulations for their vehicles, and the kind of comfort they give to their consumers is it's a bit different from what they do in India. I mean, they have their business issues because India is a cost sensitive country, and over here more than security and safety, cost determines to go for a particular brand. So I mean, they are not entirely wrong, but that is how business has been done. So this auto industry was given this particular mandate to manage these things. The first thing this auto industry did was to hire a third party, which is a credible one, to conduct a survey to 22 to 23 major cities in India, which will be done completely by independent firms. And the result shows that vehicular pollution is much lesser than stubble burning, construction dust, etc. Especially if you take the case of Delhi, stubble burning was almost something around 35 to 36% of the pollution. Construction dust were around 7 to 8%, and there are various other factors attached to it. But vehicular pollution was something around 3.5% to 4%. So as I said earlier, it's very easy for pressure groups or NGOs or media to pinpoint at brands for their visibility also, rather than getting into deep into one particular subject. So this particular survey was then again given to thought leaders, given to independent surveyors, given to media, given to various academics to study, and finally after almost 6 to 7 months of outreach by the auto industry, obviously heavily done by the PR agency also. They did a lot of social media outreach, they did a lot of media outreach, they did a lot of seminars, they did a lot of industry forum events. And I think in last 2 to 3 months of time or 4 to 5 months of time now, the scenario and the thought process of common people and as well as the media reports have taken a different turn, and stubble burning and construction dust are now considered as the major contributor to pollution. So at times, as consultants, one has to advise the client or the brand has to take necessary steps to ensure that negative press or negative environment or negative thought process or negative perception, which can be managed by a logical act by the brand, and that is the best way to do it. Any questions?
Hello?
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
So, as we were discussing earlier, I had just one question that, there are times when our personal ethics and our professional requirements and, the professional ethics, they clash.
yeah.
So, during such a dilemma, what
Hmm.
should one go for? Or is there a midway or something? Like, what should one do in such situations then, if there's a clash?
See, I personally believe that there is no midway. So either you do it or you don't do it. I mean, I'll give you my personal example. I was handling one particular brand which because of certain incident there was uh, certain deaths. And morally, I thought that this is not something which I would like to manage. But my seniors, they sat with me and they tried to resonate out with me. And later on, I understood that being a professional, one has to work on certain things which you may believe or you may not. But it's, as I said, it's a personal choice completely. I mean, in my previous slides, I have said that there are agencies which has taken this step of not working for a liquor company or a tobacco company or a meat processing company or a lottery company. Now, if you look at media, media doesn't have any kind of certain. They have not taken any kind of step like that. A media company will be very happy to advertise, promote brands which are either into tobacco. May not be a direct one, but there are always innovative and creative ways to promoting and advertising certain brands. So it's completely up to the brand or also on the professional. I think it's more on the professional to take the call. I mean, after 22 years of experience, my take will be, I will go for the client, even if I am not convinced with the issue or the ethical malpractice. Because as a professional, as I said, as a doctor or as a lawyer, especially, I mean, our profession is more related to lawyers. And lawyers will defend clients fully knowing that the client may be on the wrong side of the law. But that is how consultants work. But again, it's a professional choice. I mean, you may choose not to work for a particular brand.
Yes, sir.
Was it clear or?
No, sir, really clear now.
Yeah. Is there
Thank you.
any other questions? I know, but to be very frank, as I said earlier, I mean, please take me as a fellow student. And as I said, I have not done much courses when I joined my professional career. Whatever little I have learned is in last 1 year when I have tried to utilize my lockdown time. So I still consider myself as a student at 45, and take me as a friend, and please be free to ask questions which also makes this session more interesting and interactive. Anything
Yes,
which, I mean, I think a lot of you has already joined different companies.
yes, sir.
So I mean, if anyone who has joined a new company and if there are certain clients which they are working on, if they want to discuss on that, if to be very frank, every company in India has certain issues and challenges, and that is the reason they generally have their corporate commission department and they hire a PR agency. So be it a product company, be it a service company, be it any other company. So if there is anything which comes across to your mind from your current set of clients or current set of work, and if I be able to give some kind of input from my side, I'll be happy to listen to those questions.
Ashkar, can I ask a question?
Yeah, ma'am.
No, was it the company you were talking about, auto company? No, for
Yeah.
the
So
groundwater
yes.
problem. Were
Yes.
you referring to Coke? The Coke in
No.
Kerala? In Kerala?
The auto company I was referring to was Maruti in Manesar.
Acha, okay.
Yeah. So
No.
they got into a
Huh.
huge tussle because unfortunately the kind of factory they have, the size and scale of the factory,
Yes.
which generally should have been in the outskirts or not near the villages. But
Okay.
I mean, unfortunately, because of I think the availability of labor, the state government as well as the company decided to have the factory in between the villages. And auto companies, they have to, they tend to use a lot of water, and the entire water gets wasted
Yes.
in the factories. And that on the only logical way and the logical business call will be to have this water from underground water, because that is the easiest way to do, where you don't have to invest money. But within 2 to 3 years.
But now we are moving into a water shortage. I mean, it's already hit certain
Yes,
states, isn't it?
that has, so a lot of companies like Vedanta, even Reliance in Jamnagar, they have started this rainwater harvesting, which is doing really well for them. And the
Okay.
company I was talking about, the CSR activity was Reliance. So Reliance, I mean, they spend say huge amount of money on CSR, but 90% of their CSR money or the activities are in and around the villages from where the people are coming to work for their factory. Now there are huge questions that whether that is the right way to do or not. From the company's point of view, when I was in Reliance, I mean, I used to say that the company has to spend money, X amount of money for CSR, and why not to spend that money for people whom we are already working with, rather than doing for someone who we are not working with. But different section of the media, different section of pressure groups, they said apart from helping out the own employees, you can also reach out to people who are more needy. So those are things one has to come across when you're working for a big brand and they have multiple issues.
Yeah. Another question I have is, your Coke and I mean, a Coke factory in Kerala, I think, faced a lot of problems a year or 2 years ago, isn't it?
Yes, that
They had
that
to
was a
shut down.
that was a second example I gave. And
Ah,
it's a beverage company. So I mean, I think
okay.
that the brand didn't took it seriously, and they thought it's a issue which is going to die down, which actually didn't, and it became a big pain for the brand. In ideal condition, a company like Maruti, which took a decision within 6 months of time to mitigate the entire issue, so that the business as usual comes back, and it's a win-win situation for the politician also, for the company also, for the villages also, for the workers also. So I think the company has to be more proactive on taking steps which may not have a complete showdown, but in a way people are they get convinced that the company is at least serious about doing something. So I think
Yeah.
on the Coke issue, I mean, uh, ideally I should have taken the name, but I think they reacted too late. For a company of that magnitude and the kind of brand they are, the steps they should have taken much earlier.
As far as aerated drinks go, Coke, Pepsi, all these brands,
Yeah,
if you look at their carbon footprint, which everyone
yeah,
is talking about today, and when you look at the waste matter,
yes.
in any state, it is those bottles, those plastic bottles, which are the main component of any waste that you find.
So,
But then no one is doing anything, and the companies are going on producing their Coke and Pepsi and whatever, whatever.
ma'am, you're absolutely right. When I was traveling to Singapore for some work, uh, the beverage companies in Singapore like Coke or Pepsi,
Mm,
every day they used to have at least 200 to 300 different vehicles which is
mm,
to come and collect those plastic bottles from the dustbins and
mm,
other areas, and they directly go to the company factories to either get recycled. It cannot be rebottled, but there is some major use to it, or even disposing it. Unfortunately, like India, I mean, the same companies
mm,
they're doing business at a much larger scale. India is
mm.
all about scale.
Yes.
But I haven't seen any kind of activities. A few days back, I went to Dibrugarh, which is a very small city in Assam. It's a beautiful city.
Yeah.
You know, 3 to 4 years back, the kind of garbage which used to be there in Dibrugarh, now it's like it's multifold. Every here and there are plastic bottles lying over there.
Oh,
Every here and
oh
there,
yeah.
Gutka,
Mm,
things are. So,
mm,
I think it's a moral duty of the companies also to take steps
yes.
to, take
Mm,
care of the environment as well as selling things. And
mm, mm,
especially if
mm.
they're doing certain good practices in other countries, why not India? Because India, you always get the scale and the profit margins are huge. So, I mean,
Yes.
it's a company's call. Uh, but I was very surprised in Singapore when I saw these branded trucks coming and picking up the plastic, and because a country like India, a country like Singapore, they take plastics very seriously.
Mm, mm, mm.
I think somehow I mean I mean I will not entirely blame the brands, because in Singapore the government rules and government laws are also very stringent, and they enforce the law in a very stricter formal way. In
Mm,
India,
mm.
it doesn't happen. I mean, government is busy into multiple things, and they think plastic or environment will be a issue, but that comes much below the priority list. If I think the government takes up serious steps and they try to enforce certain things in a more stronger way, I'm sure the brands will also comply to it. I mean, if they're doing it international, they will do it in India also.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, it depends on company to company how to take it. Certain companies
And
which
Bhaskar, but if you look at the oceans, the waste matter that is found there, I mean, most of it is composed of plastic bottles.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, it has to, I think, happen from multiple sides. If the government is not so proactive, the companies or the
Mm.
brand has to be proactive. If the brands are not proactive, as a citizen, someone has to do. Like, I know someone in my family, my brother-in-law and his family, they have decided that, they will not use plastics at all. It's very difficult, but I was surprised that they strongly believe in that and they don't actually practice it. I mean, uh, they whenever they're going for vegetable shopping, they're taking their own organic bag. They don't take Coke or Pepsi in the plastic bottles. So
Mm.
I think if that kind of movement also starts and it takes a momentum, then maybe in a way it may compel the brand or the government to take a more strict action, because
Yes.
it's a responsibility of everyone in India. Actually, every issue gets diluted in between who's going to take the charge or whose fault it is,
Yeah.
rather than someone taking a decision and then proactively saying I'll lead this issue. I mean, if there are issues with the government or issues with brands, I think citizens are also free to take their own decisions. Like uh, as I said, someone in my family has taken the decision of not using plastic at all, and I mean they don't use plastic bottles for drinking water at home. They use either
Glass. Mm.
uh, glass bottles. So after spending 10 to 15 days in Assam, I have also started doing the same at my home. And I'm sure that if my son sees me and if he also takes it as a practice,
Yes.
maybe in another 7 to 8 years of time when he will be adult, the things will be much more different, and that may also make the brands or the government to take serious notice of these issues.
Mm. Mm.
So should I go to the next slide?
Let's see if any students, anyone has any opinion, any comment, they can, because this is a very wide and very relevant situation.
Yeah, I'm sure, especially students, they have their own set of thought process, which is very different from us. And it is very different in nature. And I would be happy to, listen to any kind of question or any type of statement or anything if anyone would like to, share. I think it's too early on a weekend.
Everyone's sleeping. You can carry on, Bhaskar, huh?
No issue, no issue. Yeah, yeah. I'll take the next slide. Now, especially when it comes to business environment and ethics and the nature of business or how business has been done, in last 7 to 8 years of time, things have changed drastically. Drastically for the PR professional, for the companies, for the business environment, for the media, for everything. Now, if you ask me, I think there are two big things which has impacted this environment completely. One is emergence of digital and social media. There was a time, I still remember the 8 to 9 years back when you go to a journalist and you try to pitch for a story, and if the journalist is convinced, and if the story is sold, you used to eagerly wait for the print edition to carry your story. And there was a time when news used to be in print edition in the morning, and then maybe in the afternoon or maybe in the evening or sometimes the next day morning there used to be online story. And of course there was no social media. So the only exposure you get is 100% is print, and if your luck is good, then there is online. Now things have changed. Now things have changed. Now media houses, they have their own Twitter handle. The journalist has his own Twitter handle. So when a story has been, visible, it's generally the publication house Twitter handle that breaks the story, which is followed by the journalist who either retweets it, or he adds certain elements to that particular tweet and again retweets it. And within half an hour to 45 minutes, there is an online story, and basically one doesn't have to wait for the next day's print story. So scenario has changed. News has become more real time. There is a particular issue. I mean, there was a time when if there is any incident of fire or any incident of major mishap, people generally tend to run to their home to watch the TV, because that is the only real time news they can have, and especially during the time of Doordarshan, that was also not available. Thanks to the private channels, is still they carry this kind of news. But nowadays, if you even if you're out, you can access the TV on your phone, you can access Twitter, you can check online news, you can Google it. So the availability of the news and the availability of real time news and multiple news is something which has impacted this industry very much in a good way as well as a bad way. Now, I still remember, and Sri ma'am can correct me. Um, 10 to 8 to 10 years back, there was nothing called fake news. Am I right?
Oh, correct.
Because the only kind of news used to consume used to be print or electronic.
Hmm.
And there can be factually incorrect story, or there can be stories which highlight a particular issue, but on a scale of 1 to 10, 9 stories used to be correct. I mean, there was no scope of fake stories. uh, there is reasons to it, and as Ma'am will agree to me, in print media there are different filtrations which happen. If a journalist is filing a story, it will go to the desk. The desk will check it out. Then it will go to the editor. So there are multiple proof points and multiple checkpoints for a particular story to go to bed. So in general, apart from factual number issues, which generally it's not a general thing, but sometimes it happens. Otherwise, the fake news concept was not there. Now the fake news concept has started because of the emergence of digital media. Now, if you ask me, I mean, everyone and anyone is a influencer in Twitter and LinkedIn. You can write anything. You can create a Twitter handle using a different IP address, where people cannot trace you out that it's linked to you. Uh, and you can always post stories which are not only factually correct, it may be demeaning for a particular brand. Now, that is where the role of PR professional becomes more complex, because a particular maybe a tweet or a online story which pinpoints to a brand and highlights certain unethical practices of the brand. Now, as a professional, we may think that the brand is at the wrong side of the law, and we may choose not to work for the brand. Now, for me, I'll rather wait and I'll verify that particular news, because a lot of times either competition or pressure groups or NGOs, they get a lot of malpractices of getting into this fake news to harm a brand. And uh, there are multiple examples to it. I'll not discuss on that further. But as a profession, I think our role and our responsibility has become much more greater than it is to be in 8 to 10 years back. Because 8 to 10 years back, this kind of issues were not there. Now, any competing business or any particular journalist who can tweet from his personal Twitter handle for a particular brand, highlighting certain issue which may not be completely true. So as professionals, I think we have to be more calm and composed on taking a particular news and building up perception of a brand. Especially in my 22 years of experience and last 7 to 8 years of time, I have seen there are multiple issues which are created out of nothing. And at the end of the day, when things get cleared, the brand reputation is already hurt. So as someone earlier asked, as a professional, one what is one should do. So I think the first thing should be, to do a deep dive on that particular news and to understand that what are the issues which can be raised out of that particular news, and then take a conscious decision of whether managing it or not. But as I said, emergence of digital media and social media has given voice to multiple people and multiple unknown people, and people generally, in order to get noticed, they post something which may not be completely true. Srimam, correct me if I'm right.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I've seen people, just to uh, increase their Twitter numbers or followers. They certain times, they pick up topics which are very, sensational, critical in nature, without realizing this thing, that the kind of harm they can do it to a particular brand.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Like, this current issue of Nidhi and Howard. I mean, first of all, one should not get into, the basics and start accusing either the journalist or the university,
Uh,
because everyone has an opinion, and certain times, I'm feeling bad for the university which has got nothing to do with it, and is coming into a lot of
uh,
negative perception.
yes.
Have you seen the kind of tweets people are doing, that if the journalist is going into, say, special events, and if the particular event company is tweeting by tagging the university, to then the responsibility of the university is also there to verify those things. I mean, people are accusing the university of not monitoring the news socially.
Yes.
People are saying that the university is not very forthcoming. They should have done it earlier. Now, I mean, especially in this particular social media exposure, there are multiple people writing multiple things. It's very difficult to pinpoint and deep dive on certain things, and then come out with some kind of rejoinder or some kind of statement. It becomes very difficult. I'm actually feeling very bad for the university. I mean, people are just taking pot shots at
Yeah, correct,
our,
correct. Huh.
whereas
Another thing is this influencer thing, and then a lot of times it happens, you buy your followers,
yes, yes,
and then you buy you say something, and then you want it trending.
yes. So every company, again, it's not an ethical practice. Every company, when they're doing an event, especially if their product launches, either a auto company or a mobile company or a consumer electronic company, they generally try to buy bots and try to have their particular topic or hashtag as the top trending hashtag. But I don't know how much it helps in terms of business. I'm sure if people are writing big monies onto it, there might be some kind of deliverables which comes out of it. But personally, if you ask me as a consumer, I may not buy a product or recommend a product just seeing that the hashtag is doing very well in either Twitter or in LinkedIn. But that is the way it is, and the another major emergence or problem for professionals, PR professionals or communication professionals, is the emergence of YouTubers and influencers in a way. So
Yes.
every auto company and every telecom company, telecom in the sense, mobile manufacturing companies, whenever there is any particular launch, or even if there is no launch and there is a lull time, they always engage influencers, so-called influencers, to create short videos, or Insta post, which may highlight the brand, it may highlight the services and the products, the technicalities, and the USP of those products. Most of the time, I'll not say most of the time, almost 90% of the time, these are all paid, and
They are paid.
they are paid. Yeah, yeah. And then I mean, I know certain YouTuber who charges almost 12 to 15 lakhs for a 15 to 18 minutes of YouTube video, which is money.
Wow.
Now coming to businesses, I know in the same sector, in a mobile manufacturing, companies. I know companies which has taken this conscious, decision of not using these influencers and let the brand or the product, to talk about themselves. But generally, that is done by the companies which are actually at the top and who are actually selling their products without any, influence of influencers or this kind of, social media partners.
Yes.
But
Yes.
companies like the smaller, sixth or seventh number of in the top 10 mobile manufacturing companies, the companies which are at sixth or seventh, they generally tend to use this influencer and they use it. Almost every week, every month, to highlight their products. And again, I think it's not the ethical way to do it because, uh, in a way, I think these influencers are also harming the real sense of journalism which used to be earlier.
Hmm, 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 hmm.
I mean, now I've seen that certain section of print media they get the review devices much later than this influencer which are paid. So a journalist in Times of India or a Business Standard who reviews mobiles may get their review devices much later than the influencers in YouTube because the companies they always tend to believe that people who are going to give them good press, or I will not say YouTube is a good press, it's visibility. They really tend to take those options which may have that 100% guarantee of highlighting their product and USP rather than going to someone who will critically analyze that particular product. And that is where I think the print media or not only print, the actual journalism is somewhere going down compared to these influences. Yes, ma'am, we wanted to add something.
No, I was saying like, but then we have reviewers, film reviewers like Rajiv Masan and
Exactly.
Anuradha, what's her name, and the guy in Midday, the who reviews films. But then
Yes.
I don't, even Times of India, if you look at it, I don't see anyone giving, low, low stars, less
Yeah,
number of stars. It's always 3 or 4 stars. I mean, how can it be? Especially
you're
Rajiv
talking about
Masan,
you're talking about Rajiv Masant, the
Huh.
film reviewer. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So
Never
I
gives
mean,
a low rating for any film.
I completely agree, and that is where the consumers or PR professionals has to be more aware that either a Rajiv Masant or the person he named from NDTV are not the regular journalists. They are freelancers and they are basically doing one particular program. Now, I mean,
Mayank Shekhar, na? His name is Mayank.
yes, he's
Huh.
also there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if I have to buy say a handset, I would rather go for a Times of India or a Business Standard review, which is more closer to the actual review. And I will also check out which journalist has actually done it. People like there are certain people in Times of
Yeah,
India and
there's
Business
that guy
Standard
now
who will do
in NDTV. What's his name?
I will not take name, but yeah, I mean those are also promoted things.
Yeah.
I mean, especially when there is a brand which is into crisis,
Mhm.
these are the media outlets they generally use extensively to create that brand value and to stay away from the negative perception. And it works. Now, as I said, as a professional, you may not think it's ethical, but that is the way industry works. And if you're not going to do it, there will be someone else who is going to do it. So, being a professional, one has to take this conscious decision that it may not be the ethical practice, but that is how my client's business has been run. So I have handled almost 4 to 5 different mobile manufacturing companies, and I will come and record and say that Samsung was one of the brands which I have seen used to stay away from influencers. That is maybe because of the kind of scale and sale they have. They can take that decision of not using influencers like the other smaller brands. But I think it also depends on the brand's value. And Samsung, and I mean, I've managed it for almost 2.5 years. I was really surprised with their way of working. And when I compare it with all the other competitors, completely different. They flatly used to refuse to, use influencers. They used to more rely on actual reviews. And I have seen brand managers of Samsung calling up journalists after giving their review handsets to understand their thought process. If there are certain things which they can, make changes. And I've seen on certain devices they have actually made changes. And that is actually the way the brand should work, and that is exactly the way media should work. Rather than getting into, engaging influencers and getting consumers influence is I think is the easiest way and the uh, more commonly used practice. But when you become a brand, I think there are certain decisions one has to make, how to, position your brand. I mean, I'm taking the name of Samsung in my session. That is only because I have seen something good about it. And I mean, they do certain things in a different way, which may not be true for other brands. I mean, other brands are also quite known, but I've seen them, whenever there is any particular launch, they set aside a X amount of money for only paying to the influencers, which certain times I don't know, I don't feel that that's the right way to do, because then there is no way the consumer will actually get to know what your product is. Am I right, Sriman?
Yes, absolutely. I don't know whether our students have any other opinions. Do you want to add to this? Geeta?
I think they're consuming, and I'm sure in another 5 to 10 minutes of time there will be multiple questions. But okay, I'll just carry on. So
Okay,
when
yeah,
it comes
please.
to ethics, and there are three different pillars of doing business. One is the business company, one is the PR agency, and third stakeholder is media. Now our work as professionals have changed, and it has become more challenging because of the changing environment of the media. When I say media, I'm not talking about the new age media. I'm talking about the old age media only. But the environment has compelled them to change their way of functioning. So one has to understand that media also has to sell a product each morning, every hour, and 365 days. So there was a time when print media used to publish in the morning, and then they used to think about what the next day story is. Whereas the electronic media is to think that every half an hour there has to be some kind of scoop on some kind. Now with this emergence of new environment, I think the thought process of print as well as electronic is almost similar now, because the print media can always do online stories every half an hour or every 10 minutes if there is a need. So that's how the media environment has changed. Earlier, there used to be huge gap and difference in between print and electronic, and online media was not there. Social media was non-existent. Now, with the current scenario, digital social media takes the major, you know, highlight of the news. Then comes the online media, then comes print, then of course side by side electronic media goes on. And recent times I have seen also radio as coming out. I mean, radio cannot do direct news, but there are a lot of barter, a lot of strategic tie-up with different brands, and they come out with very creative, catchy jingles or catchy Q&As, which is really something which is interesting and very creative. So coming back to the news environment, usually for content to fill space and time. If there is a new news, and the editorial policy of the publication house, as well as the ideas they have and the focus they have and the kind of lenience they have on with their advertisers as well as government, they can use that news more consumable for their readers. So bottom line is media is an already established pipeline. You have to provide the content. So as PR professionals, whenever you are managing a particular brand, and if there are certain issues or crises which has hit you, you have to understand that whether you give it to whether you give news to the media or not, the media is going to write about it. So the best way is to engage as early as possible before anyone else can engage. At certain times, I have seen that one particular issue, the particular company, the Corpcom department, as well as the PR agency were late to engage the media, and before that, their competition has already spoken with the media and they have given scoops, which was completely factually incorrect. And the role or the work for the Corpcom and the PR agencies side actually increased multi-fraud to first to establish that those news, those informations which you have got are factually incorrect, and this is the correct version of the thing. So it's always important that you have to respect that media. They always get to know the news, and even if you don't share the news, it's going to get back to you, and at certain section of media is always going to either print it or run it on air. So it's always important as PR professional, whenever there is any crisis, ethical or unethical, whatever it is, one has to be very proactive and very engaging with the media before anything happens. Even giving a call to a particular journalist and saying that this is what happened and we are yet to come out with a statement, but this is the time, and if you're doing any story and if you're planning to do any story, just wait for some time and get in touch with us so that you can also give our version. So that is the right way to do. Now, in today's world, the media priorities are desired to be first. So a lot of times, business environment in media also, media houses are competing with each other for the first one to break the news. First one to break the news has become a norm in electronic media in channels, and sometimes it's really hilarious the way they try to break the news first. Every channel is saying we are the first one to break. So, but that is the way how businesses have been made. And also, I'm before I can say anything further, let me be very clear about one thing. When you say media houses, to be very frank, these media houses are also business houses. So every media house has to have certain, advertising, certain type of, revenue, so that the sustenance of the business model or the print media or electronic media can happen in a better way. And also, journalists, they're also salaried professionals. They have to get their salaries also. They need their increments also. So at the end of the day, every media house is, in a way, from the promoter's point of view, is also a business organization. So coming back to again media priorities, desire to be first, speed first, accuracy second, which has become a norm nowadays, and especially with electronic channels, especially with certain very senior journalists who have adopted to Twitter of late, and they're doing really good. In a way, to be the first person to break a news, I've seen certain very senior journalists breaking a news, and after half an hour saying that there was an error in the news and that's factually incorrect. So when senior journalists are also taking digital media and trying to be the first one to break the news, this particular phase actually fits them perfectly. That speed first, accuracy second. In 8 to 10 years back, when there is to be particular news about any particular subject, the kind of filtration, the kind of fact checking it used to be, I don't think nowadays in media it's no longer exists. Sri ma'am, do you agree with me?
Because after it is printed, then it's dead.
Yeah.
After it's printed, it's dead, because then you can't do anything to it, in print media. But in digital, yes, you can change,
Yeah. So I've seen another issue which has become very prominent. So if there is any factually incorrect story in a print media, one can always issue a rejoinder, and the next day the print edition will carry that rejoinder. But I'm not very much sure if there is a negative news in a online, how to go about it, because online is not restricted to certain pages. It has got multiple pages. It's a vast area and vast scope of putting news. So I'm still struggling with that. I mean, I don't know how one can actually work it out. The normal way would be putting some positive stories in the same media outlet, but that is not the correct way. I'm not sure. I mean,
Yeah,
It's
that's
something which I'm still struggling at, and
it's a
that is the
debatable
reason
thing.
I am. Yeah, that is the reason I am very much afraid of online media, because if anything goes wrong, there
Mm-hmm.
is very little scope of rectifying it.
Yeah. Mm.
So
Right.
coming back to this media priorities, looking for new angles. So every journalist, whenever they're doing any story, they always look for new angles. So there are times when you're handling a particular brand and you're handling a particular project or any particular crisis. You actually have to think like a journalist. And when I say you have to think like a journalist, it's very difficult to do so. But there are ways to get you to that point. Like if there is a particular journalist in, say, Times of India, and you know that this particular kind of story is going to interest that journalist. The easiest way out of understanding that journalist is to read about his last 10 to 15 stories, so that you have a fair idea that if you read 10 to 15 articles of any particular journalist, you will understand that this journalist is a balanced journalist. He takes quotes from various section of the society. If a balanced story has been done, he will take a industry body quote. He will take a quote from two three players in the market. He will take the point of view of the government rather than making it an opinionated story. So whenever there is any particular project or any particular crisis which has hit, it's important to understand the mindset of that particular journalist, and also the editorial policy of that publication house. It generally helps, and at certain times a same statement can be actually customized and given to three four different journalists to suit their stories. Then quoting experts whenever there is any particular story, generally the trend is that that story has to have certain quotes, quotable quotes from prominent people or people of repute, so that the story becomes much more interesting and credible. The tendency of media is to carry stories which are of more human angle or tragedies, because that is the old school of journalism is always to highlight issues of the society, the problems of the society, and so that the regular reader or the consumer is aware of certain things. So the general tendency of any story or any line which a seasoned journalist will pick up, and when I say seasoned journalist, I'm talking about print and electronic. I'm not talking about social media or digital media. They generally, pick up stories which are more of human angle stories. So I'll just quote you something. I was handling one particular two-wheeler brand, and when I went for a factory visit, I saw that in a particular assembly line, there were like 200 women workers were working, and they were actually working on a particular product which is made for the working woman. So I went to a particular journalist in Business Standard, knowing fully well that this particular journalist is someone who is very keen to write on human stories. And my pitch was that this particular company, not only they have come out with a vehicle which is for the working women, they are actually the manufacturing unit is they have employed only women employees to work on that particular vehicle, so that even on test drives, I've seen women workers in that particular factory is actually riding it to understand what exactly the other things which can be added on that particular cycle. And being a woman, it's very easy to understand those things, and that is the way the company has actually thought, and they employed almost 400 women employees for that particular project. And that particular pitch was well sold to the journalist, and I got almost a half of a story in Business Standard weekend. So at certain times, one has to understand and one has to relate to what kind of stories one can generate and what kind of publication house they actually target. Generally the clients are always glued on to Economic Times and CNBC, and that is where as professionals we have to be more take up the role of a consultant to make them understand that every story is not Economic Times story, and the entire world is not reading Economic Times unless you're a listed company and unless there are numbers you're talking about. There are other stories which are more of the human angle, which are more of feature-ish, which can be featured in other publication houses. Uh, For media, another aspect is informed speculation. So when I say informed speculation, like a particular piece of news which is floating everywhere without anyone verifying it. So generally, journalists pick up those things, and any brand which is party to that particular speculation, they generally get in touch with them to get the real sense of the news. Photographs and video as I said, emergence of digital media as well as social media has given new life to photographs and videos. Even I'll not talk about everyone. Even for me, I will love to watch a maybe a 30-second or 40-second video as a snackable snack rather than going through the entire story. So the way people are consuming news is also changing, and the way media is offering the news is also changing. So at certain times, maybe a particular story in maybe in Hindustan Times may not work, but a particular story in eostory.com or maybe in shorts may work. Now, as professionals, we have to always customize news depending on the media outlet. So, if there is a simple press release which is going to the media, one can always cut it short and make it in 50 words or 60 words, and then share it with in shorts, which is got a depending on the brand and then the kind of target audience, especially the target audience. The brand is young, and it's targeting towards 18 to 28 or 27 age group. I think in-shots is something which is more consumed by that age group rather than the older age. I mean, even older people also going for in-shots because, as I said, time is precious and news is real time. And your story or in-shots are platforms which give you news, like 10 top news within 10 seconds. So as professionals, we have to always understand that what kind of news is going to get happier, what kind of outlet one has to use, and how to help and customize news so that the journalist doesn't have much to work on and your story can get easily published. Now, media ethics, there's a very debatable thing, but it's a general practice in print media, if not in electronic and online. I'm not very much sure of, but whenever there is any journalist who's doing it, especially in print, he's doing a particular story, and if he is mentioning a particular brand or a particular industry, the normal practice is that the journalist generally calls up the companies or get in touch with the corporate communication department or the PR agencies before the file is story to get their facts corrected before the story goes to the bed. And a lot of times, what happens, because of lack of time, because of the desire to break the news before anyone can do it, a lot of news they carry factual errors, and which is not desirable by the journalist as well as the publication house, and of course, it's not desirable by the company at all. So there are two-way communication. I mean, I've seen corporate communication people and PR agencies which are in regular touch with one set of journalists. They're checking out what kind of stories they are doing and what kind of inputs they require, and if there is something which the brand can offer so that the story becomes more relevant and balanced. They always, try to do it. But on the other hand, I've seen journalists also. I mean, journalists from reputed publication houses, journalists who are very senior with 20, 22 years of experience. They also do their regular checkups with PR agencies and brands before doing any story, because any story with factual errors is not desirable by anyone. And in general, whenever there is any query or any request for quote being shared with the companies, the general practice should be that the lead time given to the corporate to or the brand to respond should be in between 24 hours to 48 hours. But again, it depends what media outlet has shared the query. So if there is a query from PTI, I mean PTI, I'm not sure if everyone knows about PTI. Can anyone tell me what is the difference between PTI and a TOI? Hello, am I audible? Hello.
Yes, sir, you are.
Can you
Yeah,
please repeat?
yeah. I just wanted to check out if you guys understand what is the difference in between a wire agency like PTI and a mainline print publication like Times of India.
Yes, sir. PTI and ANI, like these agencies, they basically provide the news information to these
News feed to all
ground
publications.
publications.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes, sir.
So that is how, I mean, as you correctly said, wire agencies doesn't have the luxury of time and they have to file multiple stories every day so that, every, their consumers are actually the print media. Their consumers are always, getting right information on right time. So depending on the query from the publication house, it depends at what kind of lead time the corporate is going to have. In general, if there is a query from, say, PTI or any news agency, the lead time is not, I mean, it's not 24 hours, it's even not 6 hours, sometimes it's 2 to 3 hours. So one has to understand the business dynamics and the operational issues of the publication houses also when it comes to, addressing a particular issue or addressing a particular or participating in a particular story. Uh, One part of media ethics is error-free and unbiased reporting. Now, error-free is I mean something which generally happens. I mean there are different filtration processes in print media, especially with the journalist filing up the story, then his editor checking it, then the sub-editor is correcting it, then it going to desk. So multiple filtration process happens, and generally stories with errors are very very few in nature. But unbiased reporting is something which has changed in last 7 to 8 years of time, maybe because of the business dynamics, opening up of business, India becoming a prominent player in the market, and of course, and with the COVID situation, I think things have changed completely because business environment and business dynamics have taken a huge hit. So at certain times there are news which are biased in nature, and one can actually understand that if a particular media house or a particular journalist is engaging into in some kind of biased reporting, one can always avoid those publication houses so that there is no proactive story which can actually harm the brand. So it's always advisable that whenever there is any kind of issue or any kind of crisis which has happened or any kind of outreach which has been planned, it's very very important to pinpoint and shortlist publication houses which are best suited for the company. One has to go through the editorial policies of the publication houses, and after that, it's very important and key to choose a journalist very well. I'm not saying that you have to choose a journalist who is friendly. One has to choose a journalist whose style of reporting actually suits you. So that is the foremost responsibility for the PR professional. Avoid fake news or misleading heading or body copy is something which the media should always keep in mind. Controversial topics needs to be factually correct. A lot of times, I've seen, in order to, in your desire to be the first one to break the news or to make the news sensational, there are controversial topics which has got multiple factual errors. In ideal condition, it should not be, but uh, with our, current media environment, business environment, and as I said that, there is always a desire to be the first one to break a news. Certain things happen, but in ideal condition, it should not happen. And news should be factual. I actually have not written the complete thing. News should be factual and not based on a perception or based on hearsay. So for a journalist or for a publication house, when they are doing a story, uh, one has to understand that story is going to get consumed by multiple readers, and the responsibility of the publication house as well as the journalist is to make that particular piece of news unbiased and factually correct, so that the actual message or actual scenario or actual news actually reaches the consumer or the reader. Now I'm giving some example. Everyone knows this guy. Mukesh Ambani is the most influential and rich guy in India, and he manages and he's got holding in multiple media groups. But even for someone like him, taking a case like Economic Times May 28, 2007, there is a story which says Mukesh Ambani becomes the only trillionaire in India. And the next day, same publication house carries a similar kind of news, which is more derogatory in nature. DRI officials with Reliance SEZ in Jamnagar. Now, to put a context to it, the next day stories actually put some kind of negative aspect about the company, and there are certain times when your competition, or as I said, in desire of breaking a particular news, the journalist also tends to do certain stories which involves a big brand, so that the position of the story in the publication house as well as the byline is ensured. The second story is on his younger brother, a similar kind of thing, similar news, but there is a particular news which is on the front page, and there is a completely different news in the markets page. Now, this generally happens for a different reason. This generally happens because the front page editor as well as the journalist is different, and the markets page editor and the journalist is different. But it is responsibility for the desk as well as the editor that if there are stories which are going on in a particular newspaper, they should not be conflicting in nature, and they should not involve in any kind of controversy. And I mean, in general, I've seen in media, especially in print media, stories about one particular brand. Generally, there is only one story or maximum two stories, depending on the kind of stories they have. But getting 4 or 5 stories on one particular brand on different topics is something which is unheard of. So those are the error or issues which happen in media. But this particular case is entirely because of different editor and different reporter doing a story. Now, there's another story which is the business page of Times of India and the other main page of Times of India. Same company, same kind of story, but different take altogether. In one story, it says that ICICI cuts home loan rates. In the other story, in the same newspaper, says ICICI Bank's home loans rate still high. Now, this happens because of two things. One, again, the editor or the journalist may be different. Second, that there is a proactive story by the journalist of the publication house, which talks about one particular aspect, and there is a story which is pushed by the corporate communication team or the particular brand, and it's error on the desk, error on the side of the desk and the editor that they have not cross-checked or double-checked that this conflicting stories about one particular brand is going in the same newspaper. Sri ma'am, you would like to add anything?
Correct, absolutely correct. The desk and the reporters, as it is, there's always a clash,
Yeah,
and then whoever heads the desk should see the pages, but then the editor also has a final look now before it goes to print.
Exactly.
It goes to print. It at least it should strike his, when he's taking a glance through the pages.
Yes.
But then it happens. It happens.
So, as I said, as a practitioner, we always have to keep these things in mind also, because I mean, apart from media ethics, one has to keep in mind that this kind of errors may happen, and how to manage those errors. Although in this particular news there is nothing one can do rather than getting into touch with the journalist. Press today is editorial policy driven. Large corporate houses have invested in media houses, uneven editorial quality. At Times of India has a Hindu. I mean, there's a completely a personal take. I think the editorial quality of Hindu is far better than the other newspapers. And ma'am, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Right, you're right. Absolutely.
Even if there is any particular news which is more of sensational in nature, I would rather read that particular news in Indian Express rather than going into Times of India. Because over the years, I've seen that Indian Express, whenever they're doing any story, it's generally unbiased and it's absolutely factually correct. So uneven editorial quality is something which is prevalent in today's press. The predominance of politics. There was a time when almost 8 to 9 years, almost 2 years back, Economic Times used to have only one page on politics. And thanks to the current government, I mean, I'm not talking about right or wrong or fair or unfair. Thanks to this particular government and a lot of activities, Economic Times has added almost 4 pages of political pages in Economic Times. So certainly, when I read Economic Times, if I glance through the second, third, fourth page, I get a bit confused that if I'm reading a Times of India or Economic Times. But that is the way news has been consumed by readers today, or maybe that is the way the media house had decided to present the news. Personalities over issues. The classic case is Arnab Goswami. Any particular issue can be from negative, it can be turned positive. A positive angle can be given a negative side to it. So every political, every electronic media or even print media, there are journalists who are I mean, big brand names in the industry, and there are always issues with personalities over issues. So there are certain journalists in say Economic Times and Business Standard, especially covering telecom or auto. Whatever they write, it actually sets the tone for that particular story. So that is something every publication house goes through. They have to have senior people and they have to have seasoned professionals. But at certain times, this issue is very much there of that personalities are bigger than the issues. The failure to follow up is something which is good for the industry also, and certain times it's not good for the industry also. If you're managing a particular brand and if you're trying to highlight a particular good cause which the company has been trying to do for the last say 4 to 5 years of time, now your idea will be to have a sustained coverage or sustained visibility on that particular project, so that the right set of audience or right set of stakeholders gets to know about that particular work, as well as the brand gets highlighted. But at certain times, because of multiple complex stories, publication houses or the journalists, they don't follow up on the stories. So there can be one or two stray coverages of visibility, but not a constant one. So that is something one has to as a professional has to think of. So the best way to manage that is that if there is a particular news, it's always advisable not to give a exclusive to one particular party, and rather than that, give it to at least 2 to 3 different publication houses of repute, and so that there is a balanced and more diverse range of news which can be consumed by the stakeholders. Agenda driven, this has become a very common practice because of a lot of corporates and a lot of political parties investing in media houses, which in last 7 to 8 years of time has increased multifold. So this is something one has to understand, that if like to give an example, that JSPL as a company, the promoters are Congress supporters or ex-comrade Congress MPs. Now they will never go to a publication house which is got a huge lineage towards the current regime, because then a good story can also get in a different spin altogether. So I'm just giving examples of the brands just for the sake of understanding for the students. Often suspicious of business, that is the general tendency of media, that whenever you're doing something good as a brand, the first question is why you have done that. There is always this element of suspicion that every corporate is there to earn money, which they are, but whenever they're trying to do something good and giving back to the society, the general tendency of the feature media or the business media is that to look at that particular thing with a bit of suspicion, and they generally want to do a deep dive into the entire matter before doing any kind of story. Focus is on sensationalism, especially electronic media. See, 24-hour news channels, very difficult to get real-time news, and that is why we end up seeing news which are completely irrelevant, or at certain times not to your good taste. But you cannot blame the media also, because at the end of the day, if you're running a 24-hour news channel, you have to have snackable snacks and multiple news which is going on. So if you check out multiple editorial channels at the same time, you'll see there is a pattern. There are certain news, 2 or 3 news, which is generally covered by almost all editorial channels. And after that, every electronic channel had their own set of different news. Shri ma'am, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I was with Midday. I mean, don't I know it? It's a tabloid, and it was always sensationalism, you know.
Yeah. Like any labor issue, like this issue of Maruti having a labor issue.
Hmm.
There are print media who will take it in a different angle altogether. So this type of news come in the front page of Hindu,
Oh,
may get a small mention in Times of India third page, may not get mentioned in Hindu Times at all, may get a very big feature story on a Sunday in Indian Sunday Express. That is how media consumes news.
yes.
And as professionals, we have to understand that what media consumes what type of news and how the editorial policies are being derived in this media houses. And according to that, whenever there is any crisis or any kind of work or any kind of project you are working on, one is to devise that media plan.
Hmm.
The next is the Times brand of journalism, marketing led focused on advertising, dumbing down headlines in English. English is a new thing which the Times brand of journalism has come out with. There will be a lot of times you will see in Daily Times there are stories which are the headlines are actually Hindi but written in English. So one has to have if one as a professional first one has to think that if that is the kind of news your brand needs, if the brand needs that, one has to be very creative of creating those kind of snackable snacks so that the media takes it up easily. Uh, Under pressure for breaking news and competing newspapers, fight for byline and front page news. So a lot of times, the major concern for any journalist is that the his story is getting his byline or not. Different editorial policies of each media house, marketing rules over editorials. This has happened in last 4 to 5 years of time. Earlier, it used to be there, but now it has become very prominent that marketing is much more ahead in taking calls on editorial pieces also. Cog in the wheel, often ill-informed and irresponsible, just as often behaves like a prima donna. There are certain journalists who think that if they have taken a stance on a particular brand or particular project, that is the best way to do, and everyone should follow that thing. Subservient to the desk, desk has the ultimate power, so you can give a story. A particular journalist, he can write a story, but the story can get twisted in the desk for various reasons. There is always a friendly fellow. The editor is often helpless because editorially he may file a story, but the marketing guys can come and say that I have got a important Coke ad, and the space will be utilized by that advertisement. So there is no guarantee that particular story can actually see the light of the day. As I said, that marketing rules over editorial, and that is very much true to today's context. Comfort is now there's nothing more still than morning news. So in print, it's a good thing that especially if you're managing one particular project, and if there is something negative to it, if there is a breaking news already, and if a particular news has already covered it, then the scope of other newspapers are carrying that news is very rare. So coming from my own experience, we always used to advise our clients that if there is a negative aspect of any particular work, it's always better to break that news to one particular newspaper which is more friendly, where you can have a control over the news and it's not widely read. I will not name any publication houses, but any category C or category D newspaper, you can always engage and break that news and make that news in more balanced way. And that way, you always make that news more stale for the cat A publication houses to carry, unless there are different angles to it, and if the news is too big. So many corporate houses have over the years shown their interest in getting stake and have a say in media houses. Some of them are listed below. Aditya Birla is the new entrant in the media business. The company recently announced that has acquired 27.5% stake in Living Media, which controls India Today News, Ask the TV Today. Uh, they are also taking out magazines like Cosmo, Men's Health. Reliance Industry, I mean, everyone has heard of Reliance Industry. They have invested heavily in network 18. They have taken up stake in Enadu also. ADH, the other brother, he has invested a huge money in Bloomberg Beauty, although it's not existent now. So every big media house, they generally the general tendency nowadays is to invest in media so that in a way you can manage negative stories about your company not to get appear in the publication house. So this also makes the work for the PR professionals very challenging at recent times. The second thing is this advertorial thing, like I'm sure you guys read Delhi Times, and if you read Delhi Times, you'll see after the date they have now started writing that it's an advertorial entertainment promotion feature. So 5 to 6 years back, Delhi Times, I mean, 95% of their stories used to be paid stories, and there was a huge hue and cry by other publication houses as well as the Editors Guild that how can a publication house can actually change the trend in print and take all paid stories and not mention that. So that compelled Times of India to write advertorial entertainment promotion feature in Delhi Times. So if you pick up any Delhi Times, that we know there 3 to 4 years back it was not there. Page 3 has become an integral part of the newspaper. Besides the numerous photographs, the page has also become a vehicle for paid features, garnering additional revenues and for the publication houses. MediaNet is something else the Times of India has started, that is the media buying arm. So, I mean, instead of placing an advertisement, you can go through MediaNet to place your stories, which will actually in a way will be placed so that a normal consumer or a normal reader will not be able to understand that if it's a paid content and not an advertisement. So, as I said, challenging time in our profession because you have to think about those things. Because when it comes to paid media can be used for promoting your brand as well as hitting out to the company. Even other publication houses like Hindustan Times, the city supplements has also started the same trend. They have also started taking paid articles and advertorials. I think I've been able to, I've tried my level best to summarize whatever my thoughts are. A quick presentation, and I would be very happy to answer any questions you guys have. Amen.
Yes.
I think there are not too many questions, and
Any comments also are welcome if anyone has any comments of their experience or something they have noticed or.
Hey, ma'am,
Yes.
I request, can you take 2, 3 names and ask them if they have any questions or comments?
Ankita? Any comments or Pragya? We met yesterday, Pragya. Any questions?
Ma'am, no questions as
No
of now.
questions. Any observations? Anything that comes to your mind as far as ethics goes in PR, or news related?
Ma'am, news related, so a lot of times, like news people and the people who write the news, they have to think a lot before publishing a particular news piece. So, like, if I am in their shoes, then I'll have to take a lot of time to publish a particular news just because it contains truth, or otherwise, or sometimes there's political pressure from outside also, so or pressure from the bosses. So, like, what should what should I do? Or should I listen to my bosses or my seniors, or should I do the thing that I am supposed to do, like the truth? So, which ethic should I follow? The one that we need to listen to our bosses, that one, or the one that says that we should tell the truth?
so
Anyone else? Anyone? Bhaskar wants to say something. Yes.
it's a very tricky question, and ideally one should listen to their own thought and what they feel like. But in a business environment, I mean, when I say business environment, as I said, media is also a kind of business house. One has to stick to what the seniors they're saying, and one has to rationalize and then customize your thoughts according to it.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Anyone else wants to add to this? Otherwise, we are reaching the end of the timing.
Oh, but ma'am, I'll do one thing. I think everyone is trying to consume.
How many slides left?
Well, it's complete. It's complete.
Hello.
So I'll do one thing, ma'am. I'll just share my email ID. That's majumdar.bhaskar@gmail, and I'll be happy to hear any comment or any questions which may come into mind after certain time. And I'll be happy to answer those questions.
Hello, am I
You can
audible?
mail us your PPT also, which we can
I'll
share
do that.
with.
I'll do that. I'll
which we can
just
share
do.
with.
Yeah, I'll just do certain customization, and if by mistake if I mention any particular brand, I'll try to omit it, and then I will mail it across.
Hello, Shri ma'am. I guess Kriti is trying to ask something.
Kriti wants to ask something. Fine, Kriti.
Hello, am I audible? I
Yeah,
can't.
yeah, audible.
Yes, now yes.
Yeah, first of all, Bhaskar sir, thank you so much for such an insightful session. It has been a
Thank you.
pleasure to.
I think I missed you. I mean, your
Kriti,
The
your
audio
voice is
is
breaking.
not clear.
Hello, am I audible now?
yes,
Hello? Yes, sir.
yes, yeah,
So, suppose there is a firm
yeah.
and manipulates, the reviewers to give only positive reviews, or otherwise it blacklists them. So, do you think that this can be made better, this malpractice, or how do you think this can be made better if this is happening?
I mean, you're talking about a particular brand which gets into this thing.
Yes, sir. A brand or a firm can be anybody.
Okay, okay. See, I mean, it's not every brand wants positive, environment and positive news about their own brand. So there is nothing wrong to reach out to media outlets which will always give them a positive spin rather than going to publication houses which are always tricky in nature. I think the professionals, the PR professionals work or the corporate commission department is to reach out to only those media houses which can actually promote the brand in a and put it in a better environment, in a positive environment.
Right, sir. Thank you, sir.
Is there anything else I would like to add on?
Hello? No, sir. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Sri ma'am, and thanks a lot, guys, for
Thank you so much.
patiently listening to me for so long. And thanks again for taking out time, especially on a weekend at 8:30 in the morning. I know it's very
Thank you,
difficult.
Manik. Thank you, Majumdar sir, and thanks, Sri ma'am, for your
Thank
precious
you.
Yeah,
times.
perfect,
Thank you.
perfect.
Thank
Okay.
you. All the
Thanks,
best.
thanks
Have a
everyone.
nice weekend. Have a
Yeah,
nice weekend.
thanks.